Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolute masterclass of ancient royal legitimacy. We're going to break down a truly monumental event of wealth and power straight from the Mahabharata. We'll be looking at the exact methods an ancient ruler used to project ultimate authority. And I'm not just talking about authority over a kingdom, but over the cosmos itself. We're going to analyze a specific, incredible passage detailing King Yudhishthira's epic entry into his grand palace.
Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover entering the Grand Sabha, a feast of unimaginable wealth, spectacle, senses, and celebration, the ultimate VIP guest list, and finally, heaven brought to earth. Let's get right into it.
Part 1. Entering the Grand Sabha and establishing royal power.
The source text centers entirely around this concept of the Sabha. This is the palatial assembly hall where King Yudhishthira makes his grand, triumphant entrance. Now, you have to understand, this wasn't just a large room. The Sabha was the literal, physical manifestation of the king's authority. It was the absolute center of gravity for political discourse, spiritual validation, and, of course, massive royal entertainment. Basically, when a king of this era hosted you in his Sabha, he was making a definitive, undeniable statement about his exact place in the world.
Moving right along to Part 2, a feast of unimaginable wealth, or as I like to think of it, charity as strategy. To really wrap our heads around the massive economic scale of this event, we have to look at how Yudhishthira begins his entry. He starts by feeding a staggering 10,000 Brahmanas, who had traveled from all sorts of various countries. Now, in the ancient world, feeding the spiritual and intellectual class on this kind of massive scale, that was the ultimate flex. It showed absolute economic stability and massive agricultural surplus. But, as we'll see, the king didn't just give them a meal and send them packing. Oh no, the sheer multiplier here is what's truly mind-boggling. He gifted 1,000 kine, which is to say cows, to each and every one of those 10,000 Brahmanas. Plus, he threw in unused robes and floral wreaths for good measure. I mean, if we just do the math on that, that is 10 million cows distributed in a single grand gesture of charity. 10 million! This insane level of gift-giving literally transforms the king from a mere political ruler into this sort of divine provider. And let's talk about the feast itself, because it was completely spectacular. This wasn't just some basic meal to feed a hungry crowd. No, the menu was a lavish, full-on sensory immersion. We're talking rich meats like pork and venison, perfectly juxtaposed with actual mountains of sweet staples, like milk, rice, honey, and clarified butter. The food was meticulously seasoned with sesamum and jibanti vegetables, complemented by all kinds of fruits and roots. The text even makes a point to mention numberless viands that are fit to be sucked, alongside innumerable drinks. It was a calculated, brilliant display of a literally limitless royal buffet. Unsurprisingly, this enormous display of charity paid off immediately. The highly gratified Brahmanas erupted into a cheer so incredibly loud, the text notes it seemed to reach heaven itself. They cried out, "What an auspicious day is this!" By generating this overwhelming, joyful consensus from the learned class, Yudhishthira essentially manufactured divine approval right then and there, right in the middle of his assembly hall.
All right, Part 3. Spectacle, senses, and celebration. Let's see how he captivated the court.
So Yudhishthira completely saturated the environment. I mean, he filled the hall with costly perfumes and deployed an absolute army of entertainers. We're talking about top-tier athletes and prize fighters showcasing their physical prowess, right? Right alongside mimes, bards, and encomiums. You know, the folks whose whole job is just to offer really high praise. All of them performing to gratify the illustrious son of Dharma. He even worshipped the gods with various kinds of music, basically blurring that line between a wild royal party and a deeply sacred ritual.
Which brings us to Part 4, the ultimate VIP guest list, which was essentially a cosmic summit.
This absolutely brilliantly illustrates the ultimate alliance of power Yudhishthira commanded. Just look at who's in the room. You have the greatest spiritual leaders, Munis with complete control over their senses, legends like Vyasa, Markandeya, and Yajnavalkya, gladdening the king with sacred discourses. And sitting right alongside them are these fierce earthly kings, the Kshatriyas, heavily armed and famously known for making their enemies tremble. And if that wasn't enough, joining them are actual celestial beings, Gandharvas, Apsaras, and Kinararas singing celestial tunes. So you literally have the political elite, the spiritual elite, and the heavens themselves all seated together under one roof. Now, it's also super vital to note the specific military pedigree present in the hall.
The text makes a specific point to highlight elite princes, specifically from the Vrishni race, guys like Pradyumna and Samva. These weren't just any regular royals. They were youthful warriors who had directly studied the science of weaponry under the legendary Arjuna himself. Having the absolute most promising, elite military students of the age waiting upon the king, well, that served as a subtle yet completely undeniable reminder of the sheer physical force backing Yudhishthira's rule.
And finally, Part 5. Heaven brought to earth, the ultimate metaphor.
Early in the text, Yudhishthira sporting in the palace with his brothers is directly, explicitly compared to Sakra, who you might know as Indra, the king of the gods, sporting in heaven. By drawing this specific parallel, the text is essentially telling us that the Sabha is no longer just a building on earth. Through this sheer opulence and the convergence of all these powerful beings we just talked about, Yudhishthira has successfully manifested the actual realm of the gods right there in his palace. But hold on, because the text actually goes one step further.
It concludes by elevating him even higher, paying off the whole narrative arc by comparing these devoted kings and rishis waiting upon him to the celestials waiting upon Brahma himself. And Brahma is the creator god. So by comparing Yudhishthira to Brahma, the text is strongly suggesting that Yudhishthira isn't just ruling the world. He is the center of a newly created, perfectly ordered universe. The Sabha is literally his heaven, and the world's elites are his devoted celestials.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative thought. When we look closely at this text, we realize that 10 million cows, countless feasts, and endless entertainment, they weren't just about throwing a really good party. They were highly strategic tools used to host an ancient geopolitical summit masquerading as a celebration. If a single grand gathering could artificially construct a divine realm on Earth, what does this tell us about how ancient rulers used extreme hospitality to transform themselves from mortal kings into earthly gods? It's a fascinating look at the absolute theater of power. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the history behind the spectacle.